if you said to Kentucky, you're going to make the tournament and lose in the first round, or you're going to win the NIT, what would Kentucky fans have taken? Probably, let me just make the tournament as opposed to the NIT a consolation prize. I look at the other way around. I would want my school to continue to play, even though it's the NIT. We didn't bow out with a loss, an embarrassing one. Let's ask Doug Gottleib of CBS Sports. By the way, Dougie, I thought you guys did a great job on Selection Sunday. I thought you and Seth and Greg Anthony, you mixed it up a little bit and you weren't afraid. So just wanted to say that to you.
Appreciate that, DP. Good to talk to you. Well, Kentucky bringing a whole new definition to one and done, huh?
Yes, they are. But here's the poll question. NIT champion or bow out first round?
NIT champion. Not close.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I get to keep playing, and I do have a positive at the end of the season. Imagine these kids who are going to be losing in this first round. They're going to hang their heads. Those guys who win the NIT, at least you're cutting down some nylon there.
You know what's interesting is how, because of how quickly we get to that second game, I've always thought that there's not a lot of dissection into many of the first games and how they end. Anthony, I just remember like last year, Anthony Grant totally butchered the last possession for Alabama. They were coming down, they needed a bucket, and he didn't call timeout at first and called timeout at the last second, and Alabama had an open shot. And they take it out of bounds and don't get a shot. Anyway, sometimes, with the exception of the huge upsets, a lot of the games kind of get brushed under the rug. And there's just, especially now with the partnership of Turner and CBS, all the games being on, you kind of bounce from game to game to game, and you fill out your bracket, you think about an upset for a second, and you move forward. I would guess that most people, if they think back, there's a lot of teams that lost in the first round. You can't remember if they lost first, second round. You can't remember much any of the results outside of maybe who got to the Sweet 16 and who got to the Final Four last year.
Yeah, those are good points. But Duke fans certainly remember what happened when they lost to their opening round with Lehigh.
Yeah, we make a lot of excuses for teams. And last year they didn't have Ryan Kelly when they lost to Lehigh. But it's interesting on how we try and convince ourselves that, no, this year Duke is so much better than everybody else when they have Ryan Kelly. They're like, look, it's the same group minus 2 first-round draft picks, that maybe they're better cohesively on the being cohesive at the offensive end. But you can't tell me that it's that much difference a year later in terms of overall talent. They're a little bit better in terms of how they play as a team. They got a little bit of infusion of talent. But last year they were, badly beaten by Lehigh. It wasn't really that competitive a game for many parts of the game.
Talking to Doug Gottlieb from CBS Sports joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Give the audience a couple of do's and don'ts here filling out the brackets, or maybe what not to do filling out the brackets.
I don't know what happens is so often it's the last thing we see, and Louisville has become the flavor of the month. And look, we got done at CBS, and then we all went over. Most of us went over and watched the Big East Championship game, and their second half against Syracuse was unbelievable. I mean, that was like downshift, goodbye. Syracuse just withered with their pressure. They start hitting shots, and it was as remarkable a thing as you've seen. Then you look, and you're like, wow, they've won 13 or 14. Like, how are we not on Louisville? What's happened is sometimes you watch too much in the regular season, you get down on a team. Look, to start the year, we thought Louisville and Indiana were the two of the best teams. They're both 1 seeds. If you still believe that, don't talk yourself out of that, I would also say that be cautious of what happens sometimes is you pick an early upset, okay, and it's that second game that can get you in trouble. The upsets that you pick in your bracket that hurt you are the ones that you have going forward to the Sweet 16. If you have an upset and you have them losing the second game, it doesn't hurt you nearly as much. So those are probably the 2 things.
The player we don't know now, but we will know in 2 weeks is who?
Tony Snell.
Yeah.
Tony Snell went to the same high school as Kawhi Leonard in Riverside, California, MLK High School. And his growth and maturation, I know you're going to have Steve Alford on a little bit later.
Yep.
He exploded at the Mountain West Conference Tournament Championship. He was the MVP. And Kendall Williams was their league MVP, but Tony was their best player. And if you ask all the coaches in their league, they're like, look, we're just glad that Tony listens to Steve and doesn't break out of their system, because he's got 20 and 25 a game in him if he wants to. He's just not a turd. He's not gonna break out of what Steve has him running. But Tony Snell is 6'7", can shoot, can defend, and is like, a classically Alford-trained player that totally knows how to use screens. New Mexico is really good, and Tony Snell, I think, is their best player.
Here's a concern, and I know you work for CBS, so I know it's a little bit delicate when I ask this, but when the tournament sets up these brackets, how much does filling the arena mean for the NCAA and the tournament in how you're going to send a team, where you're going to send a team, and why you don't send other teams?
Well, most of the tickets, they'll tell you most of the tickets are sold anyway. I think it's a great, I'm in the best site, like Salt Lake City. So there's no teams from Utah in the tournament, but the place is going to be full because they have Gonzaga, they have New Mexico, they have Arizona, Wichita, Pitt. Those are all great, unbelievable traveling parties for New Mexico. Bring 10,000 people, Arizona bring 10,000 people, and Gonzaga is the same. Zag Nation's ridiculous. So I think that's a good thing.
But how much does that factor in, though, Doug, where you're going to put these schools because they'll travel?
If you earn the right to be protected, then Kansas State playing Kansas City, Michigan State, they play in Auburn Hills. I think it should factor a little bit more. I like college basketball is about the environment, isn't it?
I agree.
So all of a sudden we're going to take the environment totally. Like, I think we need to get out of these domes. At least one of the things that Turner's doing, I don't know if you've seen this, but they're actually moving the print writers away from the court, and they're selling these big packages to people who could sit down close to the court now. So I think that's a win. Now the next thing they need to do is get the coaches tickets back and sell those to fans. Coaches don't really want their tickets anyway, and people who don't know what I'm talking about, at the Final Four, it's the National Association of Basketball Coaches Convention, and head coaches get 2, head coaches emeritus get 2 as well. Assistant coaches get 1 ticket. And a lot of those assistant coaches, they don't want their tickets, but they don't want to get caught scalping them either and get arrested and get fired. And it would create a better event if the fans had better seats and were closer to it, even when you're putting it in the middle of a dome. I prefer it in an arena, but if you want to make the money off a dome, put the fans closer.
There's a couple of things that have stood out. If Duke had Miami's schedule success this year, or North Carolina did, they would be a number 1 seed. I know we're looking at Miami as a novelty act, but Jim Larinaga is there, and I think that to win the regular season and their conference tournament, it was unfair to them not to be a number 1 seed.
Well, hold on. Let me disagree with you there, Dan, because remember, they lost to Florida Gulf Coast. They lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Wake Forest, and they also went out to Hawaii and lost out there. Now they had an injury out there to Reggie Johnson, but they went out there and lost a couple games. So they lost by 19 points when they're out in Hawaii. So look, I understand.
But when did they lose in Hawaii, Doug?
Huh?
When did they lose in Hawaii?
Christmas.
What?
Christmas.
Yeah, that's an eternity ago in college basketball.
Okay, but they just lost last week to Georgia Tech at home.
But they still won the. Are you trying to tell me Duke and North Carolina do the same thing? They're not number 1 seeds?
Well, Duke. If you take Duke's non-comp, look, I thought Duke actually this year has a better case.
No, but Doug, I'm just saying, if they won the regular and the conference, then you're going to be the number 1 seed. It always happens in the ACC, right?
Probably.
Okay, that's all.
But again, this is a rare year. North Carolina beating North Carolina twice doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean nearly as much.
But you still won, though. We always we're going to be picking and choosing here. I thought Miami was a great story. They just don't have the pedigree here. And
okay, so who are you going to take off? Here's the question I asked Greg Anthony. Who are you going to take off the 1 line? You taking Gonzaga off? Because who'd Gonzaga really beat?
Well, you could do that. You could. I mean, Gonzaga just did what they were supposed to do, and then they sort of, by attrition, they got number 1.
How about this?
Okay.
How about this? New Mexico had a better resume than Gonzaga.
Yep.
But they're not Gonzaga. Everybody loves Gonzaga. And I don't dislike, and here's the thing. People get caught up in it. When I say that Gonzaga is like Notre Dame football in that I know their record's really, really good, but they didn't beat any Big Ten teams.
Wait, do they have a Manti Te'o?
I think. Well, I actually asked their guys. They said all their girlfriends are totally real.
Okay, wait a minute. Final 30 seconds here. I got to run. Give me your final 4.
I was torn on this one. I pulled Louisville down and put Michigan State up there. I'm in love with Sparty, and it may be the end of it. I got Indiana.
Yep.
I got New Mexico.
Yep.
And I have Florida.
All right. It's great to talk to you. Tell the boys I said hello, and hope to talk to you here soon with the tournament.
It's good to be able to talk to you again.
Thank you, Doug. Doug Gottleib from CBS Sports. Yeah, I went a little bit long there. My bad. Got a little chatty there.